Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, participants, and welcome to our third module of our online access control crash course. Today we'll be zoning in on life and safety's implication on door hardware and related accessories. And as a reminder, the goal of this course is to equip system integrators with the tools and resources necessary to confidently guide your customers through their access control purchase journey. So you may be new to the world of access control, and so this course will really help you give a solid foundation of the product line and industry. But for more advanced access control integrators, again, as every module will start off at a high level, but then eventually get into more detail, so stick around. What to expect for the next 4 weeks. Today we're covering door hardware and related accessories and its implication on life and safety. If you haven't caught modules 1 and 2, the recordings are available on our resources page. Links to that have been sent prior to this webinar and will be sent again after this webinar. Next week, we're covering access control software. So as you can see, we're climbing up the access control architecture. Then we'll be taking a break between modules 4 and 5. After that 1 week break, we'll jump into modules 5 and 6, which are more geared to an advanced access control audience. And if you've been following along since module 1, you'll be well equipped for modules 5 and 6. And at the end of the crash course, after module 6, we will release our final exam. And participants require 80% or higher in order to pass the exam. Details regarding that final exam will be made available in the next coming weeks. As a reminder, and throughout any time of this module, please use the question dialog box to submit your questions. One of the members of the team will be responding to questions as they're submitted during the webinar. And we'll also have a brief question and answer period that follows the session. To introduce myself, my name is Derek Arcuri. I'm the Product Marketing Manager at Genetec with a focus on access control, and I'm joined by François Brouillet, the Commercial Manager at Genetec. For the best experience throughout the next couple of weeks, please join our LinkedIn group to ask questions, to share material, to collaborate with classmates, and even to submit homework. If you haven't so far, the sign up link is available in the presentation. It'll be made available after the module. It's also included in every automated email going out to all registrants. François and myself will be monitoring this group to answer all questions throughout the weeks. And do note that this video will be recorded and will be made available after the webinar. So as a review from last week, we kicked off the module talking about the role of controllers and interface modules, and then walked through some common controllers and interface modules that we integrate with. We then introduced the Synergis CloudLink appliance and talked about the value of a 3-tier distributed architecture as you're bringing more intelligence down to the edge for a more reliable system. We equipped you with some responses to common questions we hear from end users regarding the architecture that you're proposing. We then continued the conversation around cybersecurity to discuss how cyber criminals can exploit a vulnerable credential, and then we proposed guidelines to secure your customers' controllers. We then went through a comprehensive approach of the different electronic locks that are supported by Synergis, like Wi-Fi, wireless, PoE, RS-45, and even data on card systems. After blazing through each lock architecture, we ended off with some hardware migration best practices. We introduced the Mercury M5 and MS Bridge product as a cost-effective alternative to a forklift migration, and then we ended off the module with a homework assignment. So let's take a look at that homework assignment that was assigned on our LinkedIn group. As a reminder, we created 2 hypothetical customer needs, testing your knowledge of door hardware functionality and the feature set available on each different architecture. So for the multi-site organization that required maximum availability and a secure architecture, the majority of participants recommended Synergis CloudLink at each site with Mercury EP controllers, downstream using OSTP version 2 to the reader. Many made electronic lock recommendations and specified access manager and directory failover and peer-to-peer communication on Synergist CloudLink. Some of you even went down to specify the brand of card you recommended. Now, I think that these recommendations fit the bill and will leave the customer very satisfied. The second customer is a single site, small installation with rather simple expectations. They just like the idea of IP connectivity to the door, as they know the installation would be less expensive. The recommendations that were made were great. I've seen Access A1001 PoE controllers, HID Edge Evo PoE controllers paired with IP locks from ASA Abloy. I particularly liked how different controllers and electronic locks were suggested in the same site, which really shows the value of the Genetec architecture. Your customers have a choice to deploy a wide variety of industry standard controllers, modules, and electronic locks from widely deployed brands in the market, so excellent work. So what will you walk away with after today's module? Today you're going to walk away with a comprehensive understanding of life and safety and the impact on door hardware that it has on occupant safety. We're then going to walk through understanding the components around the door, like the type of lock we're using, the request exit devices, door contacts, and so on. We'll then walk through some other barriers used or secured by access control, and then end off with other accessories or hardware to enhance your customer's journey, to enhance your customer's entrance into their access control system. And as we start off every week, I'd like to start off with this slide as it gauges where in the architecture we're focusing on. So in a conventional architecture, we have our client workstation that consists of the directory and the access manager. The directory is responsible for the configuration database, the client execution, any audit trails or macro execution, whereas the access manager is the command and control of the controllers and the access event storage and SQL. And then as we go further downstream, our controllers save the access settings like the database and the access rules locally and ultimately make the access control decision, whereas the input-output module presents inputs to the controller, and then the controller tells the input-output module which output is needed. And then finally, we have our door hardware, including the request to exits, the door contact, the door strike, and the reader. Today, we're going to focus our attention at the door hardware level. So request to exits, the locking device, and door contacts, etc. So let's jump into life and safety before we touch on door hardware. Now, why do we need life and safety in access control? To answer that question, I want to bring you back to an event that changed history, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York City in 1911. That was the deadliest industrial disaster in the history of the city and one of the deadliest in U.S. history. The fire caused deaths of 146 garment workers who died from the fire, smoke inhalation, or even falling or jumping to their deaths. This was a sweatshop by definition. Long hours, few breaks were allowed, and management had locked the doors to the stairwell and exits to prevent workers from taking unauthorized breaks to reduce theft. Many of the workers were not able to egress during the fire. This is why we have codes and standards that oblige organizations to comply with an important rule in life and safety, and it's that nothing can keep occupants from emergency egress under any circumstance. So let's keep that rule in the back of our minds as we walk through why codes and standards are very important to understand in order to install a compliant access control system. So who creates codes and standards and who governs how an access control system is installed and configured? Now, every jurisdiction has codes and standards. Codes are enforceable laws, while standards are unenforceable, non-binding guidelines. Now, it's in every organization's best interest to comply with codes and follow standards that vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, especially if they want their certificate of occupancy. An example of a code is that it's forbidden to require a key, a tool, or special knowledge or effort for operation from the egress side. So while locking outside doors to prevent people from entering a building is obviously permissible, inhibiting free egress is not. And an example of a standard is that a B-style connector is commonly used to connect two wires, but alternatives are fine, like crimp-style connectors or wire nuts. They're not dictations, they're merely recommendations. And these logos here are just some of the main associations that govern codes and standards in many jurisdictions. To get more familiar with the Fire Protection Association in your jurisdiction, we encourage you to reach out to your A&E community. So the National Fire Protection Association, known as NFPA, is the life and safety Bible. Virtually every building, process, service, design, and installation is affected by NFPA's 275 plus codes and standards. The Golden Code is specified on the slide, which essentially says that in general, every person within the building must be able to exit all doors in their path to the outside without the use of a key, a tool, or special knowledge. Of course, there are exceptions to that in the case of prisons, bank vaults, old folks' homes, and the newborn nursing floor of a hospital. In the case of a nursing floor, for example, in the hospital, typically a delayed egress device like a crash bar is used, where if a card isn't presented to exit, the individual would need to apply 5 pounds of force on the door for about 15 seconds, or say 30 seconds, before the door opens. During that time, an alarm will sound and operators will be notified. As a result, people are still able to egress, or still able to exit, but have a 15 or 30-second obstacle if they don't have the appropriate credential to leave. Another example of a fire protection association is the CFPA in Europe, which has similar codes and standards where doors shall normally open outwards in the direction of escape and be openable without a key or some other tool. So very, very similar. And working from published codes and standards, how can we ensure that the hardware you're installing will behave as intended in accordance to these codes and standards like NFPA or CFPA? This is where certification companies come into the mix, like Underwriters Laboratories, or UL, and CE, which stands for Conformité Européenne, which literally means European conformity. Now, if a product carries this mark, Underwriter Laboratories and CE found that samples of this product met their respective safety requirements. In the case of UL, these requirements are primarily based on their own published standards for safety. CE, however, will certify that the samples of given product met their European Union's health, safety, and environmental requirements that ensure consumers and workplace safety. The European Commission describes the CE mark as a passport that allows manufacturers to circulate industrial products freely within the international market of the European Union. Now, comparing UL listing and component recognition is like comparing a car and an engine. Now, a car is a finished product, and an engine is a necessary component. However, not every engine is compatible with every car. The same is true for UL recognized components, which will not be compatible with all end product requirement applications. UL listings evaluation of an end product includes an investigation of the construction and performance of all installed components. It is not until a recognized component is installed within an end user product that UL can verify compliance with the conditions of acceptability. These certification bodies certify that the assembly of components like controllers, interface modules, readers, power supplies, and enclosures behave as intended and adhere to the purchase standards for safety. The Synergist CloudLink appliance and legacy SMC appliances And the associated kits, including power supplies, enclosures, and DIN rail assembly, are UL listed assemblies. These markings deliver an additional level of confidence to the market and a third-party validation to trust Synergis. Finally, if your customer's access control system ever fails, all electric locking devices fall into one of two categories. They either need power to lock or they need power to unlock. So fail secure means that if the power fails, the door remains secure or locked. Fail safe means the opposite. If power fails, the door is unlocked. So in other words, fail-safe locks need power applied to the lock to remain locked. In this case, a maglock, electrified lever set, or electrified panics are common options. Maglocks are primarily used for glass door applications, and electrified lever sets and panics are commonly used in stairwells of a large building. Why? Because if a fire breaks out and the access control system is offline, occupants must be able to freely move from floor to floor to avoid the fire. Therefore, electrified panics must be latched but not locked. Latched to ensure that the door is not swinging in the wind, as that allows the fire to spread, but never locked to ensure free movement from floor to floor. Be aware that when a fail-safe product is used, the door will be unlocked whenever there is a fire alarm or power failure, which is an obvious security risk. Again, a fail-safe lock opens and unlocks the door when the power is removed by an access control system or a power outage. Think of how a maglock locks. A magnet holds the door together with an electromagnetic bond. We'll talk about maglocks later on in more detail. Fail-secure locks need power applied to the lock in order to unlock. So fail-secure locks lock the door when power is removed from an access control system or during a power outage. Therefore, the common option to comply with fail-secure doors is an electric strike. Like maglocks, we'll introduce electric strikes in the next section as well. Now let's put this concept into perspective. In the United Kingdom, there is now a standard for magnetic locks called TS010, which specifically states electromagnetic devices as not being suitable for emergency or panic doors. Now, in the UK specifically, and a number of other European countries, you cannot use maglocks on emergency exit path doors, as these need a mechanical means to override the door without creating a potential spark, especially if there is a gas leak situation. Since maglocks secure an opening with electric current, a spark can occur. So again, any door secured by a maglock is also an emergency exit door that must be retrofitted. Like access control is affected by fire hazards for safety purposes, access control installations are also regulated to accommodate persons with disability. So the Americans with Disability Act, or also known as ADA, is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life, including jobs, schools, transportation, and all public and private places that are generally open to the public. This means that organizations must place the reader at a certain height, and the door must open outwards as opposed to inwards so that cardholders can roll in without having to back out first. While ADA is a U.S. legislation, it is used as a guideline internationally. While it may not be enforced as a law, many countries have adopted the codes as best practices. In recent years, the United Nations has accepted ADA into international accessibility guidelines that have been ratified or principally accepted by several countries. Many European countries have adopted the Equality Act of 2010, which is very, very similar to ADA. And do you know why doorknobs are illegal in certain regions? It's the ADA that prohibits the installation of doorknobs in public and private settings. This is to accommodate persons with limited grip, like people diagnosed with arthritis. ADA ensures that handles do not require tight grasping, tight pinching, or twisting to operate the door. Lever-operated mechanisms, push-type mechanisms, or U-shaped handles are acceptable designs. Also, ADA mandates public area accommodate persons with limited mobility at all turnstiles. Think of metros and large corporations. So up until now, we talked about codes and standards that are published by fire protection associations in your local jurisdiction. We talked about how third-party conformity assessment bodies ensure that access control hardware will behave normally in reference to these codes. Then we have fail-safe versus fail-secure locking options based on the use of the door, like whether they are fire exit doors or if they're stairwell doors. Then disability laws affect where readers are placed and the swing of a door, so there's a lot to consider when guiding your customers through their initial design. Ultimately, if we do everything properly, we'll get the approval of an AHJ and receive a certificate of occupancy. So authorities, or AHJ stands for authorities having jurisdiction, and they are an official designation used in many organizations, including government, military, construction, and a variety of trades, ensuring your system complies and meets the code we talked about previously. Simply put, AHJs will assess whether your customer's access control system will or will not endanger life safety during an emergency. Now, there are two common types of AHJs: building inspectors and fire inspectors. The building inspectors ensure that all work is performed within the constraints of written building codes. They know both national codes and local exceptions. They ultimately want to ensure that load-bearing doors are installed properly, ensuring the integrity of the building's structure. Fire inspectors will enforce fire codes. They survey the installation work. They may even mandate the project plan signature approval. They are life and safety experts, not structural experts like building inspectors. They're examining fail-safe, fail-secure exits, ensuring wires are connected to the right power supply, and so on. So if AHJs approve, your customers are awarded their certificate of occupancy or their certificate is maintained. So we wanted to graze over life and safety before we get into door hardware, as your recommendation is primarily driven by codes and standards. And a special thanks to Charlie Howell for helping us with the life and safety portion of today's module. Charlie is a senior associate at WJHW, a consulting firm with global presence. Now, if you have any questions about life and safety in your jurisdiction, you can connect with him on LinkedIn. Charlie is also part of our LinkedIn group. So with a quick life and safety 101 under our belts, let's now move on to door hardware so as to see how your recommendation will differ based on the use of a door. First, let's cover the door basics. Common door components include a frame, a mullion, leaf, door closer, hinge, and strike. Let's cover all of them. A strike is a metal fastening on the door frame into which the bolt of a lock engages to secure the door. A hinge is a jointed device that attaches the door to the frame. A mullion that you see on the screen there is a vertical beam that forms a division between two doors in a single opening. Now, they provide structural support. They allow for a strike application in place of vertical rods and allow the door to swing different ways. Mullions can be permanent fixtures or removable. The frame is a doorway in which a door is fitted, including the sides and top of a doorway, and is usually supporting a door. The leaf is the rigid panel that fills the doorway. There are many variations on the basic design, such as a double leaf door that we can see on the screen. One of the most important items of an access control door is the closer, as you want the door to close and lock after entry. So the closer will provide pull as to close the door automatically unless the entrance is, of course, obstructed. And we'll cover the electrified access control door components like electric strikes, mag locks, request exits, and door contacts in the next couple of slides. But first, note that not all doors are the same, and modification is limited to certain doors. Now, doors must adhere to code requirements. The door swing plays a role in hardware specifications, as emergency egress doors must swing outwards. Inward swinging doors slow down the flow of movement during mass egress in the event of an emergency. If the door is load-bearing, like what is illustrated on the slide here, then modifications to the door's frame is limited, as this can compromise the integrity of the building's structural safety. Since load-bearing frames are installed to support structural weight of walls and roofs, modifying these frames can cause structural damage. And if the door is fire rated, then any hardware or accessories hung on the door must be fire rated as well. Fire rated doors and frames include a metallic tag that lists how many minutes the door can withstand fire exposure before failure. So what if a door is modified incorrectly? Well, you run the risk of affecting security and life and safety rating, as we just talked about, but it can also affect noise pollution and HVAC balance if the door is not perfectly aligned with its frame. In that case, this can cause the door to swing in the wind, as it may never latch, affecting the building's security. It may also affect insurability due to negligence. So with that under your belt, let's now cover some common door locks. Which of these common door locking options would you choose to secure a perimeter door, a stairwell door, or an emergency exit door? Your choice is primarily driven by published codes and standards in your jurisdiction, but there are also a number of other factors that need consideration between selecting an electric strike versus, say, a mag lock, including the type of opening itself, the applicable life and safety codes, and door usage type. Now, an electric strike replaces the regular strike for a lock set or panic device. It's used as part of an access control system to provide added security and convenience, such as traffic control and remote release. An electric strike is typically paired with a storeroom function lock set or panic hardware, so access is controlled by the electric strike. Fail-safe electric strikes can't be used for stairwell re-entry because fire doors require fail-secure electric strikes for positive latching. Fire doors do not require face-secure electric locks, only fail-secure electric strikes. Electric strikes are a common and favored option for interior, office, or single-door passageway openings. Electromagnetic locks consist of an armature and a coil assembly, which become magnetized when electric current passes through them. This magnetic field secures the door and electronically controls when doors are locked and unlocked. Recall that electromagnetic locks are fail-safe by design, meaning that if power goes off, the door will be unlocked. You'd need a battery backup to keep the door secure during a power outage. Electromagnetic locks are used to secure the door in conjunction with push bars, request exits, devices, or readers for fail-safe applications when code compliance permits. Now, these locks are often the ideal solution for glass doors that need to be electronically controlled and for single standalone doors. Electric strikes are generally low voltage devices to control a movable keeper. The keeper interacts with the latch bolt of the lock set on the door and allows the door to be opened upon activation, even though the latch bolt of the lock set is in the extended position. In other words, you power the lock to unlock the door. This is significantly more energy efficient and is more discreet and aesthetically appealing than a mag lock. Now, electric strikes can be used for many types of applications, including interior control, perimeter control, stairway control, elevator control, and fire exits. So it easily can comply with codes and standards. However, electric strikes doesn't add any pounds of force to the door, and with all the small moving parts like the keeper, the strike box, it makes it prone to malfunction. So proper maintenance is required after a certain amount of door operations. Door locking alignment is critical, and maintenance is key to prevent wear and tear. If they are neglected, the door may stop latching and can swing in the wind, compromising the building's security and fire safety. There are two common types of maglocks, including pull and shear action. Pull requires a pull from the magnet and armature when power is cut, while shear means the armature and magnet slide away when the door opens. Door locking alignment is particularly critical with shear type locks. An advantage of maglocks is that they are relatively easy to install, so they are sometimes often chosen over electric strikes, particularly in retrofit situations. The use of a strike often requires an integrator or installer to cut openings into the frame or make modifications to the openings. With an electromagnetic lock, the construction is generally limited to drilling holes in the frame, which is both less intrusive and less labor intensive. Maglocks add force to the door. A common maglock adds about 1,500 to 3,000 pounds of hold force, providing the door locking alignment is perfect, especially with shear type locks. If the alignment of the magnet and armature is not perfect, the hold force decreases to a fraction of its capability. A weakness of these types of devices is that they always must be mounted on the secure side of the door. This is due to the vulnerability of cutting power connections to the device itself or simply knocking the device off the frame from the unsecure side. So this requirement may disagree with the swing of the door as it relates to the frame, but a variety of adapter plates are made to facilitate uncommon mounting. These devices also require constant and uninterrupted power to remain secure, which is relatively expensive for your end user to power. So fail-safe conditions are not always desired, so battery backup is a common feature of the power supplies for these locks. A request to exit is an input that tells the controller that a person is requesting to exit. It effectively ensures occupants are able to freely and safely exit an area. This is always on the secure side of the door and is a requirement in many regions. Exit motion sensors is an infrared request exit device using motion detection specifically designed to reliably release locks. Now, a person approaching the door is seen by the motion detector just before reaching the door. The crash bar that you see on the graph there, on the slide there, and stainless steel exit devices serve the same purpose. When pressed or engaged, the interface module will immediately tell the lock to release, and the controller and will record the event and pass it up to the access control system. Emergency brake glass, which is a door release, they're typically green. This draws its name from breaking the glass to pull a fire alarm. For your information, fire is red and HVAC is white. Now, a range of interface units are available to connect the fire detection system with other detection equipment or to control plant and fire protection equipment such as conventional detection zones, sprinklers, and fire dampers or door release units. Fire alarm interface relays are meant to cut power to the lock. This cannot be via software due to regulations. It has to be hardwired. And what does a contact sensor do? A contact sensor essentially just tells your system if a door, gate, or any other barrier is opened or closed. It just tells us what is the status of the door. They're typically installed on doors, windows, or drawers. They are two pieces, one installed on the door itself and the other installed next to it on the jamb or frame. When the door is opened, the pieces move apart and the sensor signals open to the security system, and vice versa. So we often talk about securing doors, but the reality is that there's so many other openings that are secured by barriers and managed by an access control system. So we'll quickly cover some other potential openings. Now these can include gates, turnstiles, lockers, server racks, and cabinets. In the case of cabinets and lockers, the big value in securing each locker or server rack is the audit trails. Knowing who accessed a particular server because a suspicious failure occurred, or knowing who accessed a medical cabinet last before reporting missing medication in a hospital setting is a great use of access control. Also, opening parking barriers is a great example of access control, but reader specifications and card specifications are important to be tested before implementation. But note that our differentiator at Genetec is the ability to unify AutoView and Synergist so that an AutoView Sharp V camera can act as a reader presenting the license plate number to Synergist CloudLink, just like a reader would present a card number to a controller. The controller would then make a decision based on the access rule at the gate and the card holder privilege. You can then control access by defining access rights and monitoring activities within your parking lot. So up until now, we went through life and safety, covering fundamentals like fail safe versus fail secure. We went through basic door hardware. Now let's talk about other accessories that you can suggest to your customer as you're guiding them through their purchase journey. So traditionally, enrolling visitors meant taking their photo, recording their names and any other details. This is often error prone at the badge office or reception area and also time consuming, but a better approach exists. The ID Scanner plugin helps customers streamline visitor enrolling and enhance accuracy of the information. Customers have the ability to enroll users from official documents such as a driver's license and passport. This particular plugin scans North American driver's license and passports directly from Security Desk. It maps driver's license and passport fields to cardholder and visitor fields in Security Desk. The import cardholder and visitor information by scanning the AAMVA barcode of a driver's license or the machine-readable zone of a passport or other travel document. They can also use the cardholder or visitor's driver's license or passport picture as their picture in Security Desk. Traditionally, there was little traceability of who had access to which assets managed by traditional mechanical brass keys. All key holders had access to the same assets, but when theft was discovered, no one knew who was the last one to access the asset. Customers wondered if it was worthwhile to secure all of these assets with electronic access control and benefit from all the capabilities an access control system can deliver. But for, say, lower value assets, this may have been overkill. But fortunately, there's a better way. Through a handful of integrations with popular asset management solutions, your customers can keep their mechanical brass key system in place, but benefit from the accountability and traceability associated with electronic access control. Our plugins improve security by helping operators visually identify cardholders associated to key management events. This integration is part of the strategic series of key management systems that we integrate. So we have quite a variety of different brands, from Deister ProcSafe to SABloy Tracker. Traditionally, operators would wait for a call that a gunshot event took place to respond accordingly, and then, of course, trigger a threat level or lockdown procedure and follow their operating procedures. Or operators would trigger the threat level based on perceiving an active shooter threat. They would have to search and find the shooter to help the first responders neutralize the threat. This is an inefficient way to deal with a threat, especially when moments matter. The gunshot detection integrations from ShotSpotter and STS gunshot detection provides operators with immediate notification and actionable information in the event of a gunshot. It reports gunshots as events and gives operators a visual cue of the situation through a rich integration with Security Center maps. Imagine how much more empowered operators are with gunshot detection sensors superimposed on their maps. When that unexpected event takes place, they can quickly change the state of their security system by automatically triggering an active shooter threat level. They know where the gunshot was detected, so they can click the cameras in that area to get eyes on the scene. They can usher bystanders to safety by manually unlocking doors if they're on the active shooter's path. Therefore, help first responders neutralize the threats more efficiently. So STS and ShotSpotter is just another sensor that integrates to security desks that delivers events that can trigger alarms and threat levels. Also, traditionally, we waited until 8 readers were down and then we investigated the cause. It was a grid failed 3 hours ago and has been running on battery backup, but no one knew that the grid failed. So they waited for failure in order to take action. So there's no way to know when the power supply went out that an enclosure was running on backup. But now there's a better approach that exists. With the PrefTech Life Safety Power System, operators can monitor power sources within their enclosure, react directly to power supplies that are overloaded, or go offline in order to take action before the battery backup fails. So gone are the days of 8 readers falling offline because of power supply failure. Also note that Genetec resells HID Fargo printers. Embedded within Genetec's unified interface, Synergist's badge designer and issuance capabilities leverage an intuitive and graphical approach for your customers to design and print badges. With a granular set of user privileges and an advanced card request workflow, you determine who can create, view, print, and distribute badges. Also, badge printing and encoding is possible with certain models. And also note that we offer pre-wired kits that facilitate the installation for system integrators like yourselves, so you don't need to troubleshoot the connection while the enclosure is on the wall, and it ensures that the core of the installation is done up front. Additionally, empty enclosures are available. These are already customized for Genetec supported controllers like Mercury and HID. Note that the enclosures we resell are available in our Synergist hardware brochure and includes the part numbers as reference. The link is made available at the bottom right hand side of this slide. So this concludes Module 3, a rather short module where we discuss life and safety in detail, from fire associations to certification authorities like UL and CE. We've covered fail safe versus fail secure applications, and then we got into the actual door hardware and how your recommendation to your end users vary based on the applications for the door, whether they're fire rated, load bearing, and so on. We then covered other potential openings like gates, server racks, cabinets, and then we moved into additional hardware that can complement your customer's access control system. So what to expect for next week? As you can see, we're climbing up higher and higher in the access control architecture. Next week, we're talking about access control software. After our access control software module, we'll be taking a 1-week break and then resuming for modules 5 and 6. We're expecting more participants that will be joining us at module 5. Again, if you've been following along for modules 1 and 4, please continue for modules 5 and 6, as the final exam will be comprehensive and including content from modules 1 to 6. Additional details regarding the final exam will be made public in the next coming weeks, but note that participants require an 80% or higher to pass the exams. And also note that today's video recording will be made available for viewing after today's webinar. With that said, I'd like to take us into our question and answer period. And as a reminder, if you do have any questions or comments, please use the question dialog box located at the right-hand side of your screen in your GoToWebinar interface. Both Francois and myself will be reviewing the questions that we've received thus far. We'll go on mute for the next couple of minutes and then jump back online to summarize the questions that we've received.